we need to talk. We need to have a talk about remainders. It's time to take you from a youthful 4th grade understanding of remainders to a mature 6th grade understanding of remainders. So let's talk. Remainders have been a part of your life for quite a while. And I want to, before we get to talking about remainders, let me review real quick what we did in the last lesson, which was to divide numbers involving decimals. And I'll talk about why that's related in just a minute. But just as a reminder, if I want to divide 6 and 55 hundredths by 5, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ignore the decimal for now and figure out where it goes at the end. I'm going to say I can make one group of 5 here. Times 5, left with 1, bring down my 5. Is 15. 5 times 3 is 50. Oops, it's not be 3. 3 is 15. Mistake a lot of folks made when you end up with a 0 in the middle of your long division problem, doesn't always mean you're done. It's great, but you've got to have you've got to come all the way out to your last digit here. So don't forget to bring down your 5 and make one group of 5. Now that's not the answer, but I have to figure out where my decimal goes now based on an estimate. So this, if I look back at my original problem, that's about 6 divided by 5, which is really close to like 5 divided by 5, which is 1. So I'm looking to place my decimal somewhere where I have an answer that's roughly 1. And that would appear to be right there. My answer would be 1 and 31 hundredths. Okay? Alright, let's talk about remainders, and I'll tell you why. So I'm going to go back. This is a whole number. There is no decimal here, but that may change in a moment. So I want to work this problem out real quick. 352 divided by 5. I know I'm going to have a remainder. I picked this. I know I can't divide this number evenly by 5 because it doesn't end with a 5 or a 10. So I picked this because I know I'll have a remainder. So let's see. Remember, I think 5, I can't go into 3. So I go out 2 digits if I can't go into the first. So I'm going to go 5 times 7 is 35. Doesn't mean I'm done. And again, a lot of times, this was another problem we had, is like, well, I can't make a group. So a lot of times in the formative, somebody said, well, I can't make a group for my last spot, so I'm just done. I'm just going to say the answer is 7. But 300 divided by 5 is obviously not 7. It's got to be more than that, right? So that's fine if I can't make a group. I just have to say, okay, I make no groups. And 70 is a lot more reasonable. So here we go. So I have a remainder. I have a remainder of 2. 3 ways you can communicate this remainder. One is the old-fashioned way, which is just say, oh, I have a remainder, so the answer is 70, remainder 2. This is very 4th grade-ish, before you know what really a remainder means. Not really wrong, but it's just kind of immature. So the second way you've seen me doing it a lot so far this year is I have kind of said, okay, well, I'm dividing by 5, which means I'm making groups of 5. I made 70 whole groups of 5. 70 times 5 is 350. And these last 2 didn't fit in a group. That's that remainder of 2. So instead of writing remainder 2, I've been saying I have 2 out of my next group of 5, or 2/5 of one more group, 2/5 of my 70th group, 71st group, sorry. So another better answer is 70 and 2/5. So that's a good way to do this. There's another way. Remainders are one way to show that there's less than a whole group. Fractions are a way to show that there's less than a whole group. Decimals are also another way to show that there's less than a whole group. So even though this number doesn't have a decimal in it, I can still use a decimal to express my missing part, my extra part. So watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a little magic here. I'm going to extend this, and even though I got down to 2, I'm just going to say, well, I'm not really done. don't have to stop this number in the ones place. I can also express it as a decimal with no tenths. 352 and 352 and no tenths are the same number. We just don't usually write fractions or decimals when they're zero. But if I do that, I can keep working my problem. Bring down my zero. And look, so now I can say, all right, 5 goes into 20 4 times. But I know my answer is around 70. It's not 704. I know my answer is about 70. So what I find is my answer is actually 70 and 4 tenths. So another way I can write that is 70 and 4. Oh, no. We'll do it the decimal way. Sorry. 70 and 4 tenths. Third way to write the same answer. 2/5 is equivalent to 4 tenths. Those are equivalent fractions. And you'll notice I got 4 tenths over here. So it's a third way to write my decimal. I just made an extra spot to get a decimal part of an answer. So I would say this is a way you should be working out and probably doing less in favor of a fraction or a decimal. Let's do one together. Alright, let's do 715 divided by 2. I know I'm going to have a remainder or a fractional part because I can tell that this number can't be divided by 2. That's why I picked it. 715 divided by 2. 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times 5 is 10. I'm doing the division fast. That's not really where the interesting part of this lesson is. And 2 times 7 is 14. And now we're to my remainder. Now we're where it gets interesting. Let's think about ways I can write this answer. So the first way, 4th grade style, I can just say, well, it's 357 with a remainder of 1. That's my 4th grade style answer. Second way, I was making groups of 2, and I only had 1 out of my last group of 2. So 1 out of the next 2 would be a half. So I could write it as 357 and 1 out of the next group of 2. Right? 357 and a half. That's the second way. We've talked about that one. Third way, with a decimal, I can just not be done. Change colors. And say, all right, I'm going to be clever here and say 715 is the same as 715 and no tenths. I don't write no tenths normally, but it's there. So now I can just extend my problem. I can just do another place in my division. Now 2 times 5 makes 10. But I know my answer is about 357, not 3,575. So I've got to put my decimal where it makes sense and just say my third answer is 357 and 5 tenths. Like that. So I can express my part as a remainder, as a fraction, or as a decimal. It's all the same thing. It's 3 different ways to show the same idea. Just in case you're not convinced, 1/2, that's the same as 5 tenths, and that's the same as 5 tenths. So those are the same answer. This is the decimal form of a half. And they're the same. All right. So that's 3 ways to write a remainder, and we will try this tomorrow.